just wanted to talk about writing in movies a little bit because one of the things that struck me when I watched Mandy specifically is I was just wondering how one writes for something that's so visual. Because, like, obviously, you know that the visuals are going to carry a lot of this, but how do you write that in a way that makes sense on the page, and how do you conceive of writing that? Because, like, I have to just write design documents and stuff that are in a way describing a visual, but there's a lot more that's going to go on. So yeah, anyway, I want to know your answer.
Well, it's a very good question. It's something I think every writer struggles with and changes their approach to over time. And specifically about Mandy, we knew that it had a very particular tone. And I think more than visuals, like it extends to sound as well, which can be very overlooked. But there was this feeling, the sensation. And it's like, with Lynch passing away, it's like you watch so many interviews with him, and I'm sure that the Faber and Faber Lynch on Lynch book was like a religious text to me when I was a kid. And there is that element of not wanting to, explain everything and be mysterious. But in between there, he's such a great direct communicator. If you look up interviews with him about writing things, he reduces it to very simple terms, but he talks about just putting on the page what you want things to feel like. And I feel like that's more important than the specifics of visual command of where and when a camera is going to look. But, it's difficult because there are two types of writing in the movies industry, which is there is a person with a personal vision that they want to share, and there's working for studios or development, adapting things, where part of your job is politically maneuvering around writing text that satisfies all these political issues, like, on page one. I mean, things about like appealing to the actor in the first or second sentence, having like a break at the bottom of the first page that's going to make the person want to turn to the next page. But a really good, I'm wearing the Substance t-shirt. You can find Corley's script online for The Substance, and it is an extraordinary screenplay that is hyper detailed. Sound is in it. All these things that you're not supposed to put in a screenplay or you'll be taught in film schools. It's there. And it's there in the movie too. And it's even more detailed than Mandy. Like in Mandy, that was very much Panos had this particular vision. There were pieces of art that we were sharing. And he even commissioned some paintings at one point. To represent conceptually the movie, but just
so you aligned on the vision first.
Yeah, and for me, like I was writing for a director, and because I've directed things, I was servicing his vision. Like, and I've always described working on Mandy as I was trying to help my friend not get lost in the woods, because you can get lost in the woods when you're writing a screenplay. But also that tied into this atmosphere that we were trying to corral and bottle and share with people, which we both grew up, 100 miles on either side of the Canadian border, me in the US, him in Canada, but in these Pacific Northwest primeval forests. And that sense, like we totally had a grasp on from our life experience and wanted to share and infuse the script with. I think in a weird way, like, too, writing a screenplay is an invitation, and I don't know how much design documents are, but you're trying to invite all the other people, because it's not really just about a director. It's about so many people, including actors. You're inviting them to be tempted to want to work on it. And like Corley's screenplay for The Substance is extraordinary in that it is very detailed and breaks these rules about what's commercial when you write a screenplay, but it got the cast that movie has. It got Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley to do very challenging, brave, terrifying things for any actor, because the vision was so clear on the page. So my oblique answer, I hope this helps, is just trying to find language that expresses what you want to say and feel and share it. Does that make sense?
It does. I do a lot of in my own stuff of like curating a vibe and maintaining a vibe throughout a project.
Totally.
And that's a big challenge. And there so many things that you said I want to follow up on, but I'm going to focus on talking about not over explaining and leaving mystery in there, and how do you kind of hold yourself back from over explaining? Because I like I said, I've been watching all these Soviet sci-fi movies, and I just watched On the Silver Globe, which is a movie that was unfinished. And that movie, while it has all these amazing, striking visual scenes, is just like people shrieking at you constantly over explaining to the extent that you don't understand what anybody's talking about.
That's an extraordinary movie. Yeah.
Super extreme, but the tendency for, I think, especially people in games, is to want to let the player or the audience, in the case of a film, know what's going on and understand the workings of this. But it's so much more powerful when they have to fill in the blanks. And so how do you hold yourself back from over explaining and giving viewers space to fill in the blanks for themselves? And where are those blanks, kind of thing?
Wow. For speaking for myself, it's so intuitive. I mean, there's definitely, there are so many things in Mandy. There are artifacts that are mentioned by name or allusions to things that are never explained, but we know them. We know the millennia year history of whatever the thing that is mentioned is. And to us, it was very much like the original Star Wars. Like, you saw Boba Fett as a kid, and you saw all this like incredible detail, like almost anthropologically, about, what was his history or her, for that matter. Like,
who is that? You want to know who that is?
And it was just so much more profound and extraordinary than what they've done with like filling in that character and just beating it to death. Like, I think it's just, I think it's interesting that you have to buttress your reality by knowing what these things are, and then cut off to a certain extent, to the receiver, what it's going to be in a game or a movie, intuitively. Now, I often wonder this myself. I wonder how many open world games have a lot of like mysteries that, are unresolved, that people fall down rabbit holes, icebergs, or they even think ARGs. But sometimes I wonder if it's just, honestly, it was something that didn't ship, it was a feature that was incomplete, or a quest line that got dropped, and there were art elements that were designed, and so they were there. But that does pose the interesting thing about how, no matter what, when people are given fragments of narrative, they then start to create a story. And this is another thing I think games are so good at, is you, the player, end up telling a story about what happened to you while you were playing it, which is really like, very different. Cinema is such a control medium, because at its best, it's really about when and where you're looking and listening at something, which is so controlling, and also linear time. I mean, it's different now, but when you're watching a movie being projected on a film reel, you really can only go one way, because it's physically unspooling. You can't skip ahead in time, But to your question, I just think it's like, have like this concrete sense of your world and what things are. And then if you pull back and just give people glimpses of it, if you've backed it up with a reality, I think they sense that. And it's just a really, like, it's dorky of me to say this, but it's really magical to have their imagination fill in those blanks. I wish there was more trust in audiences to do that. I mean, we just had this, there's this talk recently that on certain projects, there's been, dictates from on high, from executives, like, make sure to put in dialogue so that people who aren't watching the screen understand what's happening. Right. So a character describes in dialogue, I am washing my clothes right now. Oh, I'm so tired. Like, so the person doing it as a second screen experience knows what's happening on screen, which is really sad, because, to me, there's the power of mystery. I think it's not talked enough in games. The power of mystery in games is as extraordinary as it is in film, like, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Something I think I talk about a lot is, like in a game where the camera is fixed and there's like a corner that you can't see around in a city, and it's like, what's over there? Or like when you get to the end of the edge of the map in the Yakuza games, it's not a dead end. It's that you can't go further, but there are cars driving and there's people walking. So there's like the idea that there's more city, but you just can't go there. And that's a kind of mystery that I think we're pretty good at. But narratively, I think one thing that we often miss in games is having built out, like, unless it's a Baldur's Gate or something, we haven't always built out all the rest of that world because we're just trying to like get as much in there as we can. And sometimes, kind of to the Boba Fett thing, you wind up with some stuff that you half did but got scrapped, and it's like that could lead to mystery, but it's more likely that you're going to finish that up and release it as DLC if the game does
right,
well,
yeah.
because it's like, well, we already have some of it, so we're probably just gonna my friend is the showrunner on Skeleton Crew, and I feel like they're actually kind of
which one?
Chris Ford.
You know Chris? Crazy. I knew him like 20 years ago. Yeah.
We went to high school.
Wait, did you ever go to their parties in the Bushwick loft that they had?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my God, I might have been there at the same time as you.
That's possible.
Wow, that's wild. Waverly Films, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Waverly. Yeah, I went to high school with him.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He lives in Oakland now, just like me. But anyway, yeah, the mystery thing is the trust in the player thing is, or the audience is a very strong point, but it's also like so much of games you have to kind of explain how to play if it's complex. And so you sort of get into a space of explaining, and there's like a weird dance that you have to do, because unlike movies where you don't have to explain to someone how to watch a movie. To some extent, some people may not understand interesting editing techniques, or like they may be like, whoa, did I just transport to another area? Like that sometimes happens to people. But by and large, people understand how to watch a movie, even if they don't understand how to appreciate it. Whereas with games, almost every time you have to explain to them how to do it.
Yeah, I've noticed in games writing, sometimes it feels like it's servicing the need to direct the player to do or go places, or, to motivate them. And so, the bane for screenwriting and movies and TV is always like exposition dumps.
Yeah. Go here, do this.
Yeah. There's like setting up the escort quest through clever writing, like the difficulty of that is just as challenging as writing exposition. But for me, it's like, how do you just do the most elegant, reductive version? It always seems to be the best way. And let people's imagination play with it. But I am like really fascinated by this idea of like, the people who get obsessed with, like you're talking about, the corners you see in games that you don't know, and they go into the DAT files and they data mine and they try to get, angles on things. And, or like they did with PT, how they discovered that weird thing about the camera perspective, like how it's faking things. Yeah. Yeah.
And how there's actually there is some environment outside of the apartment. Someone they clip through the walls and there's like stuff out there.
Like you can only do that in movies with behind the scenes footage, to a certain extent. Yeah. Right. But I think these challenges are kind of similar. Yeah.
Do you have like a writing process yourself? Because I've only developed, I would say, bits and pieces of process. For myself, I don't have an overarching one. Do you, or not really?
Yeah, I mean, because if I'm functioning professionally and I'm for hire, kind of have to. Like if you have to write a TV episode in 2 weeks, and then you have steps, like you actually have to write a specific form of outline that the executives approve to release the budget for the episode. There are these structures that you have to satisfy, and you don't have a choice. You have to be very professional about managing your time and so on. So, you just gun it. Like your floor is just, your pedal is to the floor the whole time. Mine actually, I'll admit to this, though I shouldn't. A lot of it is thinking a lot, and then I type very fast. Once I've deliberated, I come up with all these things, and I kind of have to collapse all the quantum versions in my head to the one that I want to commit to paper. And then I go and type it. But I also do weird things like my wife is used to, where like I get out of the shower and start recording a voice note to myself. One thing I have learned that is good is the more I do it and as I get older, is to keep any scrap of any idea in some form. I used to think I used to have a really good memory. Maybe it's getting worse as I get older. I'm distracted by devices. But I always had this thing like, well, if I remember, the idea was the good, strong one that survived through an evolutionary process.
I've heard that idea many times. Yeah.
Yeah, these days I keep everything. And then, sometimes I don't need the act of actually writing it down a note or recording a voice memo strengthens it in my memory and allows me to play with it. But a lot of it is just, I'm not into horoscopes and stuff, but my sister is, and she's always mocking. Our birthdays are 2 days apart. She's a lichenologist, but she jokes about how we're off in dreamland all the time. Like it's just being sleep deprivation is a big part of my process, unintentionally. Yeah,
I'm big on hoarding ideas.
What's that?
Oh, I mean, like you were talking about, like keep all your ideas somewhere. Every idea that you've had, because sometimes, if I'm stuck, like I'll go back and look over old documents and there's just all these free ideas in there that I completely forgot that I had, and some of them are okay. And I'm like, or it makes me think of the better idea that idea inspires or whatever.
And I'll admit, I got it from Guillermo del Toro with his notebooks. I used to be like, if I remember it, it's a good idea, and that's the one that'll win. Yeah. But Guillermo del Toro, so many great movies Guillermo never got to make, which seems so depressing, but that's just the rate of attrition and infant mortality with ideas.
Right.
When you make things. But he talked about how you always can find a fragment from another project that was something else and find a way to repurpose it for the new thing you're doing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think your hoarding idea is great.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Something that I personally struggle with is that once I finally felt like I found a little bit of my voice as a writer, it turned out that dialogue is my thing, and what is not my thing is plot. And that's very frustrating because I just want to...
Is it? Why?
Well, so I want to do the character interactions and stuff, and that's all great. But then when it comes to writing, like pacing out a plot and structuring a narrative, I find my own ideas to be really pedestrian because I just want to get it out of the way so that I can get to writing dialogue. And then I play other people's games or watch these movies and I'm like, oh, look at all these capital I ideas that they had. Like they really had ideas for playing with structure or even just like taking this into a new zone that I had never thought of. And yeah, I really struggle with basic plot, which is such an odd thing to struggle with, I feel.
But this is I mean this in a kind, generous way. Like, but aren't there so many movies and stories you like that have shitty plots? Like, it's true. I'm leading to plot is overrated. And in fact, I kind of like have a thing where I feel general discussion and discourse about art, storytelling and art is so plot focused, which is very different from story. Story is an emergent thing, just like narrative can emerge from gameplay. But I think even the act of watching a movie, this is what I was talking about, leaving creative space. The best movies leave you to, something very strange is going on when you're watching a movie. You are watching or playing a game. You're watching a succession of still images that your brain, somewhere between the screen of your brain, is being reassembled, interpreted, and given a whole new reality in your own mind, which is so fucked up if you think about it, but beautiful. But where I'm leading to is that plot is overrated. Plot is just a sequential order of things, and it's not really important. Plot in our lives isn't important. I would give you if you can write dialogue, you're way ahead of most people, like especially relationships. And there are just so many good examples in art where plot is inconsequential or not really the important thing. I just think that, like I struggle with people talking about, something was predictable. Like, the tragic form of drama requires it to be predictable because it's all about how people did not avert the thing that was coming. Like that is a classical dramatic form that's been around for millennia and it's meant to be like, that's its purpose. And you have people online who are like dictating that they're superior to the storytelling because they saw it coming when that was the whole fucking point. It's like,
people crap on rom-coms and stuff. And like that is a structure that serves a purpose. Like it's not about prediction or surprising you or whatever. It's about enjoying the journey from this one place to another place, where you get to see these two characters come together that ideally you want them to do that and you want to see how it happens and things that happen to them. Like the predict, it's not supposed to surprise you. And in fact, if it does, that's like kind of a different, maybe a different thing.
Yeah, totally. It would be an anti-rom-com.
That's right.
Because they would end up murdering each other. Yeah. but yeah, it's like, you know, look, you're dining somebody romantic. Mandy does not have a complicated plot, very much on purpose, very committed to it.
Yeah.
You know, it is the form of a revenge movie, which have a very particular structure. And so just to get away from talking about something I worked on, but you know, I'm rewatching Twin Peaks right now out of loss and nostalgia, and also just for inspiration again. And, you know, it borrows from straight up soap operas and like Hardy Boys detective novels and psychodramas. There's even an in-show. People forget Twin Peaks has an in-show soap opera called Invitation to Love. That's a constant like running joke that has the same aesthetics as a soap opera. Even somebody like Lynch, so much of his work borrows from noir or Hollywood melodrama, and then just completely like, you know, borrows maybe like uses it as like the hook to pull you in, and then the rest of the rope is something else entirely. Mm-hmm. So I feel writing emotional things people relate to about other human beings is the hardest thing to write, and the thing that's missing from things that people don't connect with. And so if you're good at dialogue and writing relationships, don't worry. That's my advice to you, but to anybody else. And also, I just wish that as a culture, we get over thinking that a movie's narrative complexity is a sign of its quality.
Yeah. You were talking with Lynch about how, or you were talking in general about how a good narrative kind of shares something with other people. Like one reason why Lynch has been so successful is because he's inviting you into his internal narrative, his ideas, and sharing those with you. Whereas it feels like a lot of the execs right now are trying to get the creator to make something just for everyone else instead of inviting the rest, all the other people in to an idea. We're supposed to make an idea that now is pushed out to all people. And that will never succeed artistically. Never is an over exaggeration, but that's not designed to succeed artistically. It's designed to be, you know, like chewing up cardboard. And I feel like the reason Lynch really inspires people is because he invites you inside of a space that he's created and has thought about, and maybe doesn't even have all the answers to himself. Like, I loved Inland Empire, and I was watching it with my friends, and they were like, I didn't get that movie. And I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I got it right up until the end. And then later I was like, it doesn't really matter if I got it. I don't think it was designed for me to get, you know, it was designed for me to experience. And it is an experience that I continue to think about, and I can remember all these bits and pieces from. And that's where like you get that nostalgia of remembering the feelings around a piece of art instead of, you know, what it actually was. Like the like watching it again is not the same experience as seeing it for the first time, depending.
Yeah. And that's really it. It's like the criteria I gravitate more and more in this era, especially. I think you're very dead on talking about. There's been this push at an executive corporate level to create stories that appeal to everyone. And that means you create something that nobody wants to see. Yeah. And yeah, there are things that are made that make a lot of money that a lot of people see. But I think the quality about them that's extraordinary is they're utterly forgettable. Mm-hmm. And there's this very strange memory hole, cultural amnesia happening at a rapid rate, where there are movies that are supposedly statistically great successes that I cannot remember fucking existed. And if you ask somebody who saw it a week later, they don't remember scenes, you know?
You forget about it as soon as it's over sometimes with some of these. It's wild. Like, I've had that experience where I've watched one of these 2-hour things, and then as soon as it's over and I go to bed, I wake up in the morning, I was like, didn't I watch a movie yesterday? And I can't remember anything about it. It's wild.
We don't have to name them. We know what they are. There are many of them. It's incredible that they've found a formula to make these. But I think it really comes down to what you're saying about, you know, making art without a point of view that doesn't want to share anything individualistic.
Yeah.
That's the only way. It's the only way to connect is to try and share, like the Substance is just a perfect example. What really strikes me about the Substance is a funny thing I just keep holding on to, which is that in the year 2024 culturally, the Substance was a movie that it was funded by Universal Pictures. They produced it. It was shot, and then she's talked about this publicly in articles.
Mm-hmm.
She showed it at a screening to Universal execs, and one exec was just like so repulsed and disgusted by the movie. They said it was like unreleasable, and nobody wanted to see it. Was a movie for nobody. It was so disgusting.
Yeah.
And so they sold it off cheap to the distributor Mubi, an online platform who haven't released many movies theatrically at all. And went on to become this wild success. Honestly, its global box office is, I don't like talking about that stuff, but it's done incredibly well. And it just got nominated for 5 Oscars. And it's a movie with gross out moments from a Basket Case or, a Cronenberg movie, which is just so beautiful to me that it snuck in that way. But it's just an example of talking about how oftentimes the people in power with the reins on gatekeeping and what gets greenlit, they just have no idea. And the other example to me in 2024 is Chappell Rowan, who, just like Coralie, her album, executives at Atlantic Records heard her album, or at least maybe, demos while they were in the early stages, and dropped her from their label. Which they heard Pink Pony Club and were like, we don't want to work with you anymore. This is not good music. Yeah. And whether or not you like her, I love her. I mean, that song became an anthem for marginalized people celebrating, and just, she went overnight from playing to 2,000 people to 150,000 people in the space of 3-4 months, which is insane.
Yeah, that's got to be tough on your brain. I mean, in good and bad ways.
And your soul and so many things, but just as a rejoinder to what, corporate dictates tell, us what we're supposed to like and what they think they know is going to be successful. I think both those cultural artifacts are hilarious, in that both of them were, a corporate executive at some point heard and saw Chappell Rowan's music, and the movie The Substance was like, this is terrible. Nobody wants this. Dumped it, and then in the process lost out on crazy money and awards and artistic success and acclaim, and could have been part of something extraordinary. And they just dumped it, which to me is the ultimate proof that there's just a giant disconnect in some of the people who run the business of this versus what audiences want.
Yeah. And I wonder whether there are any repercussions for those executives, and their bad choices. Are they probably most likely just get to keep on making bad choices, is what they get to do.
Yeah. You never know. It's complicated. I think one of the weirdest things in Hollywood is somebody's assistant, they don't have their name in the email. Their email is blah blah's assistant, because they shuffle, they fire and change those people around so much, which is sad. That always hurts me.
Well, they had that in the game industry for ages too. Konami, I would, back when I was a game journalist, I would interview people, and I would get a new card from them every time, and it would be Koji Igarashi's thing would be K.Iga15A@mark20. And I'd see him 2 months later, and he would have a new card with a new email address, because I wasn't supposed to be able to contact him. Wow. Yeah, it's weird stuff. They would do things like have two studios.
Was that specifically about Konami controlling those developers?
It was that's just an example of something that did commonly happen, because they since in the 80s they didn't want 80s and 90s they didn't want people to get poached. Was a big thing. They didn't want we developed this 3D knowledge. We don't want that to escape our studio. But they did it in these super weird draconian ways that made it difficult to once I interviewed Yuji Naka, Sonic's dad, and and Sega PR. I had asked them if I could interview him. They said no. but then I saw him and then I interviewed him.
Right.
And they were like, how did this happen? How did you do this? And it was just because I saw him and I spoke to him. But there would also be situations, and this probably happened or happens in Hollywood as well, where you've got a company and there's two development studios within this company, and neither of them are allowed to talk to each other, and neither knows what the other project is. It's called like Project K and Project Z, and they're not sharing technology, and they're just making these things totally separately, and it's just like a huge waste of resources, and it's wild. That doesn't happen as much as it used to, but it used to happen a lot.
I think that happens less in Hollywood. I do always look at the game industry. It's extraordinary to me because I feel like basically games, you have to rebuild functionally what a camera is every 2 to 3 years. Like, I'm not talking just like I mean the idea of a camera and how it, records reality. And so there's all that like the technical fighting over technique. Whereas Hollywood has this very streamlined technical base. Yeah. And organized labor and unions, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah, like if you need a grip, you know where to get them, kind of.
And they know,
and they know what to do.
But certain structures still, have to be determined. And I also think, though, in games, it's crazy just the sheer number of people who work. Because people don't know, I worked. I don't know if I'm even allowed to say the company or so litigious, but I worked for a AAA open world developer who make games that I would say are the anti-Yakuza. So would be my clue. What's his name? Togoroshi? Nagoshi said he would never ever play their games because they're anti-humanist. I worked for that developer and I saw the extraordinary amount of human labor just in QA alone, to make these games. So it's such a, it's as massive an undertaking as making a giant blockbuster movie, if not more so, which is extraordinary. Well, I wanted to finish on this idea too of plot and its importance. Just to give you another example of somebody I really admire, whose work I'm sure where it's just totally inconsequential, but I'm so fascinated by Neon Genesis Evangelion and Hideaki Anno and all his collaborators, but how that thing is so successful in pop culture that it's on bullet trains and coffee cans and and even in the US people know the characters maybe visually on sight, but then some people really know it, how it broke through to the mainstream it really did, and has this footprint in pop culture that's ubiquitous globally. And yet it is such a weird fucking singular vision of somebody's own, admittedly, issues with mental health. And to me, it's just another example of proof that, and it goes back to even your first question. When you infuse the feelings that you're struggling with and trying to express honestly, plot is irrelevant, because the plot of the final Evangelion movie, nobody can explain it. I don't think anybody who worked on it can explain it. But what happens and how it makes you feel, and if you know the series, that's what matters. And I think is the point of all this. And again, it's just another example of how plot isn't the thing that we're striving towards. Plot is just sequence. It's information. Story is as emergent as gameplay, and story emerges from you experiencing something and adding even elements of your own life to what you're watching as a viewer. And so, how do you write to give people that space? It's very tricky, because then you have to deal with yourself and what you really want to say and what you've experienced in life, which sometimes can feel embarrassing or awkward or terrifying. But I think that's the key to it all, really. In any medium, in any artistic endeavor, are you really reaching inside yourself to express a truth you want to share with people?
I could probably do a better job of that. I
think it's corny too, but it is hard. It's fucking hard.
I think Evangelion is a real good example as well, for me personally, because I don't like it, but I can absolutely see who it's for. Because it's fully realized. You can really see that this is this has a person for whom it's written. And I find that always fascinating, even if I don't personally engage with it myself. And I like watching stuff like that isn't for me to figure, because maybe I'll learn something about the person that it is for.
But it is so off-putting. And it's like, there's motorcycle racing teams with Evangelion logos. Mm-hmm. There's like, in Japan, there's like, it's so weird that it's filtered down to like the general mass consciousness, given how weird and off-putting it is.
Yeah.
Like I'm admitting it's like not, but I think that's the key to making something that actually stays in people's memories is confronting some really harsh things. It's weird.
And I want to kind of bring it back and wind it up with a sort of a two-part thing. We were talking the other day about, because I had this idea about where Christopher Lambert or Christophe Lambert is
Christophe Lambert.
Can elevate certain kinds of movies that attempt something. He can kind of elevate them to art almost, because for a few reasons. One, because he talks weird. He's got a strange accent that comes from nowhere, because he's technically born in America, raised in Switzerland. He's legally blind. He can't see anybody that he's talking to, so he's never really looking at him, which gives him this like weird detachedness.
Yeah.
And makes all of his action scenes bizarre because he's just doing his best guess. And but also he just has this presence that makes something ambitious feel intentional. And then I was comparing him to Kyle MacLachlan, who has also been in a lot of weird stuff, but he's such a straight man that when he's not in something weird, he can't weird it up. He can't make it weird. And I feel like movies try to put him in something to give it a weirdness, but he's the straight part of that movie. And so it doesn't elevate it in that way. And then you got someone like Rutger Hauer, who people keep wanting him to play the same character, but he's like not really fussed about it. And he, or was, and he was just like getting large and not really taking large man roles. He was taking action man roles. And I've heard that he's like really great to work with and everything, but it's just interesting how some people can do that and some people can't, or maybe they don't want to try. And bringing that all back around to Nicolas Cage, who, in my opinion, has had the most remarkable career renaissance that I've ever seen. And I don't know if anyone else could do it, because he's a really good actor.
Yeah.
He's an interesting person, and he can also like bring this huge energy. And so I'm curious to hear your perspective, because for me, like, Mandy was kind of the turning point where I was like, he's 100% all the way back, because he was doing some kind of scrubby, basic-ish movies for quite a while.
Yeah, he was still, he broke his foot on a Romanian direct-to-video action piece of crap.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
before we shot Mandy. Yeah.
he's been doing stuff, but all of a sudden it felt like he was either getting the right scripts, or he was finding the right scripts, or he was saying yes to everything, and some of them were hitting. But so many people, like old action stars, like say in the 70s in Italian cinema, all of these old like American action stars would try to have their second renaissance out there in Italy, but they weren't really going out there to do it. They were going out there for a paycheck, and they weren't trying to push themselves that much. But it feels like Nicolas Cage, he was trying to push himself, but also he found the right projects where he could do something so nuanced like Pig. He could do something that's nuanced and over the top like Mandy. And then he could do like Ghosts of whatever the Sion Sono. Yeah, that Sono movie.
Yeah.
Which is just like all over the top, but it totally works. And like, do you think anyone else could ever do this? Or how do you think that he got to this point? Because it's really fascinating for me to think about.
Yeah, it is. And it's hard for me to say, because it's so individualistically about him and his own pursuit. There are specifics about him. Like, the star system too, and what that means and so on has shifted so much. I mean, one thing that he famously hasn't done until now is a TV series, when so many of the actors of his generation have willingly done so. And I think that does kind of shift things. But, I don't know. It's like the whole idea of the star system is broken. What I think is far more interesting is just that I think what happened to him, and I appreciate you saying this, like I remember with Mandy, we had to convince people like the sincerity of us being like, no, he's fucking awesome. Like it's not, we're not deploying him ironically. Like I think Bringing Out the Dead and Wild at Heart, those are two of my favorite movies, and he's an absolute anchor in them. And Face Off. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I worship the temple of John Woo. Yeah. There's just this beautifully Baroque, expressive, and like I say, there's an acting technique thing going on there that's just uniquely his. My theory, and I'm speaking for him, which I feel bad about, but this is just my personal theory. I mean, Nick is one of those actors too who there aren't a lot of actors like this. Like you heard this about like older actors. He is aware of everything on a film set. He knows where the boom mic is. He knows what lens is on the camera. He knows where his focal marks are. He doesn't need tape to hit them. Like he can do things in like one or two takes. I mean, the famous, the drinking scene on the toilet in Mandy is 2 takes. I think it's the second take. But, and there's a hitch in the camera. Actually, the dolly got stuck on something for a second, and there's this hesitation in the camera, but it's still in the shot because it feels like you're reacting to what's happening to him so raw emotionally. But I think the thing about all the bad stuff he made, he needed to make money perhaps. I don't know. I can't speak on that. I just have a feeling talking to him, he loves movies intensely. I mean, every weekend we came back from a weekend, it was talking about what he watched that weekend and very esoteric stuff from all around the world. And also talking to me about he was collecting film prints. And so I had a field day talking to him, like on that level, just about love for movies. And he's been on movie sets since he was like 16 years old. Right. And I think the thing is, he just doesn't like to be away from them. So he was saying yes to things just to be on set. And also kind of like, he talks very clearly about Michael Caine being an inspiration, just saying yes and just giving what you could, no matter what it was. But I think what happened with Mandy was, there were people like, oh, he's a corny actor now, whatever. And we were like, no, he is fucking incredible. We're not putting him in this movie to laugh at him. Right. You will laugh, but you will also feel intensely the emotion.
Yeah. You'll laugh because he wants you to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all there. And then I think what happened too was it was just a whole generation of directors and writers just remembered him the way we did all at the same time. Yeah. So all these interesting parts were available for him based on filmmakers wanting to work with him. Yeah. So I think that was part of like the Renaissance. So it's hard to say. And he's such an effect, like I don't want to say special effect. Yeah. You got to know how to deploy him and how to use him and how to balance him with the right partners and scenes too. It's a very tricky thing always with actors. Like some actors peak on take 1 or 2 and other actors need to get take 8 or 10. Right. So how do you balance that when they're playing off of each other? He's just so like such an individual artist. And like he actually, people don't know this, but we have talked about it. A lot of people don't know he shot Mandy. He was recovering from a broken foot. Right. And we were going to write it into the character that he had an old leg injury and he just showed up and just swallowed the pain and you don't see it. Like, which is extraordinary.
Well, that follows with my impression. It's just kind of like a miraculous thing where it felt like he was ready to take these challenges, and maybe he always was. But then there was also a new generation of like first and second movie filmmakers who had projects where they were like, no, it's gonna be like, this is gonna be the thing, like it's gonna happen, and. It's just like such a miraculous career renaissance where like everybody loves him now. Whereas 15 years ago, it was like people were making fun of him buying ostriches and going bankrupt or whatever. Yeah. And like it's such a flip now. And it's really interesting. And to like, the reason I wanted to talk to you about it is because I thought you would have thoughts, but also because I do feel like Mandy was the big turning point for me as an outside viewer to where like after that it really his star started like really rising again. Interesting.
Well, thank you for treating that. I don't know if it was Pig. I don't know what movie it was. I'm just glad it happened and that we're getting chances to see amazing more performances from him. You know, and that's really the best part. And I would just direct to anybody younger who doesn't know the work, watch Bringing Out the Dead, Face Off, and Wild at Heart. Even without him, they're great movies. But Wild at Heart is a David Lynch movie, but just or Vampire's Kiss, Moonlight. There's just, you know, he was an actor who, and I love this. Like sometimes, like I
love him in Con Air.
Got married. Yeah. I mean, you know, like he's like we were saying earlier, he's always entertaining, no matter how bad the material is.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes you can't separate that. Sometimes a movie is made with good intentions is bad, but at least if Nick Cage is in it, there's something to watch. And there will be some spark of creativity. Oh, and the last one I would add is, you know, Werner Herzog's Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. The full title cracks me up. Yeah.
Right.
Like that they were going to do more of them, like Port of Call, you know, Galveston, Port of Call, Seattle. Anyway, so that's my thing on Nick Cage.
My buddy met Werner Herzog once. He knew he was going to meet him because he was going to be at a dinner. And so he made him a mixtape and brought it to him. He was like, please listen to it. It wasn't like his own music. He was just like, I really think you'll like this music. He made him some music to listen to. Found that very amusing.
What did Werner say?
He was like, thanks. That was it. It wasn't very exciting, unfortunately. The interaction was not.
I had one interaction with Werner Herzog, which is I went to see a screening of his 3D cave documentary, which is extraordinary. It's about cave art, but he films it with these 3D cameras in that, you know, brief period where a few people experimented artistically with 3D. And I asked him afterwards, like, so what art are we making right now that will endure like cave paintings? And he's like, nothing, because everything we make now is digitized or electrified. The art does not exist without these things, and the mediums they're stored on degrade. So we have no monuments like cave paintings. But then he looked at me and he said, and I'll treasure these words forever. He said, but you're a very silly boy to be worried about what's going to happen 10,000 years from now. That rules. and I think he actually nailed me in one.
That's the best. Yeah, for sure. No,
that should be my bio.
He got me on the splash damage on that.
Right. Yeah.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the burn from here.
Werner Herzog's splash damage. We need to design a game around Werner Herzog. Werner Herzog's splash damage.
For sure. Okay, well, thank you for taking the extra time to do this little insert credit Gaiden.
Yeah, it's just cool to hang out with you, Brandon. I mean, for years I wanted to, and I'm sorry I had to have it virtually since we live on opposite coasts. But
yeah.
I was going to one thing just to show you that I don't know if you are capable of digitizing laser discs, but I need to find a way to archive this.
Okay, I know one guy.
Kate Bush's.
Oh.
Who, Chris?
Yeah.
This is her totally unavailable. She refuses to let it exist. I got a laser disc copy.
Okay.
And the existing online bootleg is really poor quality.
Uh-huh.
But it's like a 43-minute film that, you know, Roger Pratt, who was the cinematographer for Terry Gilliam's movies, shot. Miranda Richardson's in it. It's Kate Bush's film that she directed, and that Laserdisc copy is one of the few artifacts. Yeah.
I would love to figure that out. I've been thinking about whether I should get a Domesday device set up, which is the thing that lets you digitize VHS and Laserdiscs.
Yeah.
Well, but you have to completely tear apart your system, and this Laserdisc player, they only made 500 of them, and so I don't want to. So it's a Faruja.
Oh God, yeah.
Faruja is the family that invented like the S-Video standard and whatever kind of stuff. So like I don't want to wreck it, but I've been thinking about how it's something I should do, because I've got over here like a whole bunch of Laserdiscs that have never been dumped, and I need to. Yeah. So let's keep in touch about it. Maybe we'll figure something out.
Okay, cool.
Insert Credit Gaiden is a production of Insert Credit, edited by me, Esper Quinn, with original music by Kurt Feldman. Thanks for listening.